And Richard learned early on he would have to educate himself, and effectively he did. And because Europe was engulfed time after time during the 1850s in the 1820s, beg your pardon, in the flames of cholera, would go rushing through Europe. And of course, Colonel Hypochondria, every time the flames of cholera was sighted, even a glimmer of the smoke of cholera, and the whole family was carted up and they moved somewhere else. And in the first 10 years of Richard's life, they moved in total 12 times. Can you imagine the effect of that on a young boy? Everywhere you go, always the stranger, always the outsider, everything you meet, strange and unfamiliar. And whereas the squire and his wife, everywhere they went to their church because it was their church, they met with their society because it was their society, and they hunted with English people. And they lived this familiar life, taking everything they could from quacks, and Colonel Joseph shooting everything that quacked. And Richard? There he is. I don't even think they know he's out of the house. But he's finding the village, and there he sees some children. And he sees them playing a game, and he watches and he studies their game with his burning dark eyes burning into them. And they see him, and children being children, it's not long before they're talking. He's already learnt the Languedoc dialect of French. But as he's moved somewhere else, he quickly notices their French is different. And immediately begins to learn the Béarnais dialect of French. And as they move and move and move, he also learns l'Occitan, the Languedoc, and on and on. By the time he was 9 years old, he was on his own, unsupervised, on the docks at Marseille. Can you imagine such a thing? Where he made friends with a group of Athenian fishermen, harboured there for a while, waiting for the wind to turn. And there, because he'd already got to grips with ancient Greek, it was nothing. It only took him a few days to learn a bit of modern Greek and to master the Athenian accent, specifically the Athenian fisherman's accent. And this was how he lived. And then the family crossed the border into Italy at around about the time that Richard was beginning to cross the border from childhood into adolescence. And immediately in Italy, he set about learning Piedmontese. And then they moved a little further south, and he learned the Umbrian dialect, no, the Tuscan dialect, beg your pardon, and thereafter the Umbrian dialect, and then the Roman, and on and on. Do you know what? Well, no, we'll come to that later. But he learnt and he learnt and he learnt. And then they settled in Naples. He was about 13 years old when they arrived in Napoli. Crazy then, as it is now. Beautiful, broken Napoli. And there, Richard, well, by then, he'd already taught himself how to dance. And by now, he'd been running from scuola to chapel, from chapel to library, reading books in English, in French, in Italian, and in Latin, and in Greek. Teaching himself, because somebody had to do it, didn't they? He'd taught himself to draw sufficiently well that he was later able to illustrate his own travel books. He'd taught himself to draw swords. And having mastered the French style of fencing, he set about learning the Neapolitan and adding some moves of his own, whereby he was later acknowledged as one of the finest swordsmen in Europe, because you never knew what he was going to do next. And he'd also, and I kid you not, learned how to play chess, 3 boards at a time, blindfold.